Okay, we will call this May 3rd council work session to order. Mary, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Reed. Here. Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Parrott, Mr. Yolen,
Here.
Mr. Hunter,
Here.
Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. The first item on today's agenda is the monthly financial report. I believe Ms. Julie Moore is going to hook us up with that.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. So you have all of my charts with you. We are 9 months into the year, which is about 75%. And so I included this month actual to 9 months that you can see. And we're basically on target when you exclude things like I've talked about the past several months that are like non-revenue items. Like in the general fund, we have the workers' compensation that's budgeted, and then the set-aside money for the bond payment that's budgeted that's not actual revenue. And then in the water fund, sewer fund, and transportation fund, those are the same thing. We have carryover money from past years that we budget just in case we need to use those, but we haven't had to, which is a really good positive thing, because that means that we're using what we are bringing in. We're not having to dip into prior years. So that's something that you always want to do. Expenses are below the 75%, so that's a positive. I'm not going to go into the changes because it's nothing that's changed from the last 2 months where I've talked about, the significant changes. They're all the same, so I didn't think you guys wanted to be bored with that for the third month in a row. In addition to those charts, because it's the end of the quarter, you also have an AR summary report, and that shows what we have outstanding for taxes, utilities, and miscellaneous. If you compare that to the December report, you would notice for the taxes that we have, it's like 55,000 less, which means that we've collected that, and it's basically this year's taxes. We've gotten some of the older years, and that's due to sending it to collections with tax. They're doing a really good job, and they're slowly starting to collect for us. So I expect those numbers to continue to go down. It's just like small pieces at a time, because sometimes they have to hunt for these people for us. The utility AR is down, and that's because we wrote off the 2018 receivables, but we have collected a little bit of the older years, and we are still trying to collect those. And then the miscellaneous AR is down because at December, we had built Longwood for the second half of their portion of the buses, and that got collected. So now we have a small miscellaneous AR, which is just small things like fire alarms set off and stuff like that. Do you guys have any questions on that? So my only other question for you is, I give you a lot of reports, and sometimes because I give you so much, you don't see the forest for the trees. Is there anything that you don't feel is beneficial? Is there something that you would like to see instead?
Floor is open.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Keeping us well informed.
I was joking with Mary this morning. I am one of the few people who goes through like line items on expenses to just make sure I know what's happening. But it's definitely a lot of material. But I think it's useful for staying informed. So I appreciate the effort and the work put into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess so, because the next item on the agenda is discussion around the proposed resolution 2023-0501 to amend FY 2022-2023 budget to account for the ARPA allocations, correct?
Yes. So the reason we need to amend the budget is because the amounts are over the 1% of our original budget. And even though you approved to spend the money, we didn't budget the revenue or the expenses in the budget side. So this is just going to you, getting you to approve it so we can add it to the budget. So we're just modifying the budget for the spending. Even though you've already approved the spending, we still have to get you to approve the budget side of it. So that's all that is.
So we'll have that next week. Do we have any questions for Ms. Moore concerning our ARPA amendments to the budget? Okay, thank you. Next two items on the agenda are discussions about alley abandonments, proposed ordinance number 222, vacant alley between 500 and 600 block of South Virginia Street and South Bridge Street. It was raised by a couple council members that we have done this before, but the reason for it appearing before us again is because there's been a change in the way we're going to do it. Is that accurate, Mr. Davis?
Correct. The city attorney states that it needs to be by ordinance instead of resolution. And so the public hearing is fine. We've held the public hearing on it. It just now needs to be approved by ordinance instead of resolution. So we'll do that. Nothing's changed from the previous. It's just the document itself.
I just had one quick question about the vacating the alleys. Is just for people's information, is this in general something we're glad to do so that we don't have to maintain them as much anymore? Or is it, does it not matter? I mean, I'm just curious.
It's not an active alley. It's what we call a paper alley because it's on paper. It's an alley, but it's not actively used. And so if someone in the history of it is, even prior to me being here, is that if individuals are interested in abandoning the alley, then traditionally the council has not opposed that. They'll look into it and hear public comment. You have to have a public hearing, which we've already done.
Right, I understand alleys that we use for stuff, but or whatever, but the ones that go beside people's properties and behind them and stuff like that are, like you said, that are not used for anything.
These are not developed alleys.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, would you mind giving that reasoning one more time? We're switching from what was a resolution to
An ordinance.
Ordinance.
The city attorney said we have to adopt it by ordinance instead of resolution. However, we've already had the public hearing and all the notices sent. We just need to adopt it in the form of an ordinance instead of a resolution.
Thank you. And so that goes for the next vacant alley as well, the 800 block of First Avenue and the 800 block of Hill Street both pertain to that same issue, correct? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll deal with that at the next meeting next week. Next item on the agenda is discuss and approve the contract renewal for Labella Associates Professional Consulting Services. Mr. Davis?
So you have the contract in your packet. The Labella, as a reminder for everyone, is our engineers for the closed landfill that keep us in compliance with DEQ as far as our closure and fulfilling those requirements. And so every year we have to renew that contract in order to maintain meeting those requirements of a closed landfill. And so I just ask that you, it's budgeted and that you approve for us to renew that for next year.
I got a question. Will we ever stop doing this?
Y'all ask me that every year.
I know, we do.
The answer is probably no.
Do the gases decrease by the year?
It depends. We've had some gas that we've had to report off and on that's higher than the rate that it's supposed to be. You also have to do groundwater monitoring. You have to do a lot of things until you meet certain requirements. So the answer to that is, the goal is yes, but I'm not quite sure that will ever be the fact.
Any cheaper options out there?
I would say this company is the ones that have been, actually they bought Joyner that the town was with before. But I would say that the history that they have is the best solution for us at this point.
Just curious.
And we need, or you need action on this evening. Is that accurate? Would be preferred.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from council? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we authorize our town manager to sign the contract renewal for the Labella Associates Professional Consulting Services.
Second.
Motion properly seconded. Ms. McKay, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos.
Yes.
On unanimous vote, the motion's passed.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discuss and potential approval of the proposal for the hurt and profit. And this goes to the asset management plan we've discussed using ARPA funds. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, this is pretty much going to be the first phase of it. You see in that agreement that there is the ability to add to this contract, which I'm almost positive we will have to do in order to determine age and feasibility of different manholes, pipes. But this is the first phase of trying to evaluate what information we do have existing. And so actually, we're going to look at whether this fits under the umbrella of some funding from the Virginia Department of Health before we go to using ARPA funds. But as I said, each time that we need to do more, that we would come back. But this is just the first step in that.
I think this goes back to the discussions we've been having related to the need to at least get a mapped idea of where we are and what needs to be addressed in what timely fashion. Do we have any questions from council about the asset management plan proposal? Not hearing any. I think you guys would prefer if you had action on this as well this evening. Do I hear a motion? Or we take it up next week. It doesn't matter. If you guys want to sit on it and look it over again.
I'll go ahead and make a motion if you want me to. Be preferred. I make a motion to authorize the town manager to sign the proposal from Hurt and Profit for an asset management plan using the ARPA funds.
Second.
Motion properly second. Ms. McKay, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
On unanimous vote, the motion's passed.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is just a discussion about our vacant building official position, who jumped to a county closer to home, if I'm correct.
Yeah, our new building official, his last day was Friday. He's taken another job in Nottaway County in building official's office, which leads me to a conversation we've had prior of it took over a year or more to fill that position. And I would like for us to evaluate whether we really need to have someone on staff per se. For 2 years now, since Philip left the town and went to work for Prince Edward County as their building official, he's been assisting us 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We've talked in retreats before about shared resources and how can we partner in different things. And so I would submit to you in conversations with the county administrator that we believe, the two of us believe, that we can make it work in pretty much the way it has been, Tuesdays and Thursdays, where Philip, as an employee of the county, would work and do town business on those days, and then the town would compensate the county for his time. So I would just like, council had said in the past that they would like their own, but just trying to get a consensus of council members to think about that, and so that we can do that if so desired. I don't know that the field of applicants for that position, that we would fill it any sooner than we did before. And even the way we filled it was by that individual having to get that certification of certified building official within 12 months, as a state code states. And so Philip is already certified, obviously, and I think he's worked for the town, and it's a known. He knows the town, and we know him, so I think it would be a good relationship.
Would we be able to get him, Philip, exclusively on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Is that how it's working now, or do we just get him if we have something for him to work on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
No, we have plenty for him to do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we would, the county administrator and I would agree on a memorandum of understanding of what that workload would be and what days.
Would he possibly just need some extra support of somebody to do paperwork, inspections and stuff, or would it be enough for those 2 days for us? I don't know how much there is in a week's time. Or if we needed him an extra day 1 week because we've got a ton of stuff because the weather's nice and stuff like that, can we work it out and that kind of stuff too?
I think the county administrator and I could figure those details out, but that the building official in a larger locality, there's a building official and then there's inspectors, but for rural areas, there's usually one person that does it all. That serves as the building official, reviews plans, does all the inspections, things like that.
I'd like to know all the pros and cons before making a decision on it, though.
I mean, I just don't want us to get behind on things. I mean, I just want us we're known for being efficient, and I just can't understand why we can't fill the position and keep somebody, you know?
Part of it is a true building official in a much larger locality makes quite a bit more than what we pay, even on the top end. As far as the pros and cons, I mean, the pros are we get somebody that is already certified, already knows the town, has built rapport with people for the last 10 years, maybe. I think Phillips probably had been with the town. Don't hold me to that number. It builds a working relationship with the county, as we've said, that we want to continue to do and do more with. Shared resources that has been thrown out as a way of that type of thing, working with the county. We would ultimately, I believe, save money by 2 days a week, and we've been doing it for the last 2 years. And I mean, that's what the contractors and everyone has been used to for that amount of time already so far.
But if Philip leaves from over there, what would we do?
Same as the county. We would have to find somebody else to fill in. Same as Nottaway has done since theirs left.
So did Philip leave because of the salary?
I don't know the reason per se that Philip left.
I think we need to revisit the salaries of these people and pay them for what they're worth instead of borrowing all the time. It's good to work with the county on a lot of things, but some things we should keep for ourselves, in my opinion.
Could we,
Yeah, I can say this. A lot of towns do not have their own building official. Nottaway's building official, Blackstone and Crew do not have their own.
Could we enter in that agreement with the caveat that we may put out for applications, and if we get a qualified applicant, then we would be able to like break that
Sure,
agreement?
sure.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, I like the idea, and maybe even, and another thought, could we put out for just an inspector, somebody that could help us and the county and help Philip in both situations, where we could have, we hire an inspector and we contract that inspector out to the county a couple of days a week, or to take some of his burden off of the county. I don't know how much they're all doing, but I mean, just as a food for thought.
We can consider that. I don't know that there's that much work for both, but I can.
Right.
I can talk to the county administrator.
What about any of the college or university around? Are there any resources we could look at them for? Maybe there's a program where we could enlist an intern-like position or something, someone who is interested in the field. I'm not aware of all the programs at Longwood or at Hampton-Sydney, but possibly making more of a partnership with them going forward?
You would have to, in order for, they have to have certifications to do inspections. If not, that person that is the building official has to oversee what they're doing. So, I'm maybe not understanding what you're saying, because you technically don't have to have a college degree to be a building official.
No, I understand.
You just have to have certain courses through the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Do you think I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that it wouldn't be much different from Nicholas, because we were kind of paying for his education and him to go through the certifications and stuff like that. If there was an opportunity with one of the Longwood students or one of the programs at Longwood that was putting people towards civil engineering or something of that nature, where this would be an addition to their experience going out in the workplace, maybe, and a nice thing on their resume, I worked for the town of Farmville for a couple of years, under Philip Moore's tutelage, perhaps. Just throwing it out there as an opportunity, possibility.
Thank you. So
Do you need some sort of
I
consensus?
need more clarity,
Oh.
yeah.
I'd like to recommend that we do the status quo as far as stick with him for 2 days a week until we can fill a vacancy if possible.
So with that agreement that we're going to continue to look.
Okay.
Second.
We got, do we need action on that, or do you just need a
I just need
consensus?
consensus. I mean, you can say if every,
Is everybody in agreement there? Yeah.
Yes.
okay.
We're good. Thank you. All right. The next item up for discussion is just the updated Farmville area bus drug and alcohol policy. Mr. Davis.
This is just for your review. It does need to be passed, which will be on the agenda next week. It's an annual required that we update and have an updated policy with any of the revisions needed for meeting the federal and state guidelines for funding.
Do we have any questions concerning the FAB alcohol and drug policy? Not hearing any. So we'll have that on the agenda next week. All right, that brings us to the big show. Discussion of the planned unit development. I will start us off, and I'll have some words because I've got some stuff I wanted to get off my chest, and then the floor will be open for discussion. Mr. Davis has some things he'd like to say. They can follow up some of that discussion, and then we can open the floor back up to discussion if there's like a little need for Q&A back and forth. So I had this whole intro to my discussion that I was going to start with, but then I ran back to the shop this afternoon to get some stuff in order, and my guys were working on some projects, and I said, guys, I'm going to skip out early. I got to go get ready for council. I got some discussions that are coming up I want to get ready for. And one of them said, are you going to talk about affordable housing? And I said, well, that's funny. Because yes, in a way, we are going to talk about affordable housing. And he said, well, you should talk about affordable housing. And I know what he means because him and his brother just recently moved to Farmville. And they've been trying to move to Farmville for years. And similar to stories we've heard from others like Ricky Ewing at the library and other folks, they had trouble finding something suitable to what they wanted. And I said, well, I'm going to quote you, on what you got to say. And he said, good. He said, because every time you bring up affordable housing, it seems like the older white population gets really tense. And I said, all right, well, you care if I share that? And he said, go for it. So that's my intro. This is about affordable housing. Planned unit development is an ordinance zoning amendment that we are discussing because of the issue and the need for affordable housing. It's a big issue, not just for our locality, but across the Commonwealth, across the country. From 1960 to 1990, the median home price was equal to roughly 2.5 years of your household income. In 2020, that had doubled. And so house prices were more than 4 times your annual income. I spouted that fact to my employee, and he said, it feels like it's more than that now. For the first time in U.S. history, young people are no longer better off economically than their parents were at the same age. An American born in 1940 had a 92% chance of doing better than his or her parents. And a millennial born in 1984, who'd be 37 today, only has a 50% chance. So it's going in the wrong direction. The share of young adults living with their parents reached its highest level on record in 2020. So, how do we get there? How do we get here? Well, there's many paths, but I'd like to highlight that humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, cars have been around for 120 plus, yet we have zoned everything with cars in mind for a long time. It hasn't always been that way. And people are starting to rethink the wisdom of that. Our citizens have begun questioning it. The situation was exacerbated by the proliferation of single-family homes, baby boomers looking as a large generation for bigger and bigger homes to raise their families on bigger and bigger lots. So there's more incentive to zone for cars. Maybe we should rethink that. When you combine that siloed isolation with the advent of the internet and cable news, we've now siloed out into an existence in which we rarely have to interact with people who are different than us, from different generations than us, or different backgrounds. That creates fear, the kind of fear that can be monetized and can make media and social tech entrepreneurs very rich, but it makes us as a society worse off. That lack of diversity in housing and population has another effect. It also weakens a locality's resiliency. And one of my campaign mantras was fortitude. I want us to be a resilient community. So why planned unit development? Why now? One reason is the search for more tools that can help us get to more diverse housing for the reasons we've alluded to. Another major reason is because our citizens have routinely asked for more affordable and diverse housing. They asked for that. They asked for more green space, more trails, more bike-friendly roads. They wanted us to make Farmville a more pedestrian-friendly town with more diverse housing. PUD has the potential for us to get there. We just have to include that in our ordinance. Our citizens also want more amenities. They want another grocery store. We need more people for those companies to consider us as a locality to relocate to. People think, okay, well, Farmville used to have multiple grocery stores. And it's like, yeah, but that was before the advent of analytical data and GIS mapping that now is used for market research where people say, no, it's not going to work. So we're stuck with that issue, trying to figure out how we get enough population to get those amenities. So incremental growth to attract diverse business opportunities is another reason for finding more tools to solve for those issues. Cities and towns across the Commonwealth, across the nation have PUD ordinances. They were not all adopted through comp plans. Many I studied came about due to specific projects. I talked to the mayor of Ashland. They have a PUD. Their planning department told me it was adopted around maybe 1996 and was due to a specific project. That project never materialized. They told me they have a current project using the PUD ordinance now, though. Ashland just built a beautiful new town hall that was featured on the Virginia Town and City magazine. They seem to be doing something. The town of Scottsville considered a PUD ordinance recently around 2020, and they debated it and other zoning changes a couple times since. They had a small area plan crafted with reports from town staff, mixed use, mixed income reports by Arnett Muldrow Associates, flood planning by Timmons Group. It was come up in relation to a specific project on the riverfront a couple times. Scottsville is a town of 500 people. It's a small town. I talked to their mayor. He said their town manager, a sharp guy that I've actually had the pleasure of listening to a few of his presentations, worked really hard on a couple of different ordinance proposals and had put a lot of effort into it because council members and community members had asked for flexible zoning. They'd asked for PUDs. They'd asked for these things. And when they came up, they voted them down. So there was frustration. He said the town manager poured a ton of effort into it and all these potential projects because he wanted to help with Scottsville's revenue. And then the folks who called for that said, never mind. That town manager just got hired in a new locality. He's leaving Scottsville. They have been advertising for a new town manager for some time. And the mayor told me they're having issues getting qualified applicants. That's something we've seen in our community development director search. It's just tough out there. He asked me to spread the word that they're looking for someone, so there's the word being spread. To top it off, recent articles relay that because the town doesn't want to raise taxes and they don't want to zone for any development that would increase the tax base, the Scottsville budget had to be slashed by 25%. Services are going to suffer. So perhaps finding a way to yes, being flexible might be helpful. I don't know. Locally, Better Housing Coalition is interested in Longwood Village. We've known about that since July 2022. There was an information session at the Moton we all attended. PUD discussion arose in January 2023 on council and in the Planning Commission. Right now, seems like almost all the opposition to the PUD seems to be conflating the zoning amendment with a potential Better Housing Coalition project. To start, that potential project is a phased project with the first phase by right, meaning they could do it right now. Following phase may require more flexible zoning. Now we know that there is another bidder that has arisen for that property, the Farmville Housing Association. In conversations I've had with different partners there, I suggested and encouraged them to come before the Planning Commission and Council to discuss what they wanted to do, because I want it all out there. Everybody gets to have their say. We get to hear all the ideas. Because we're routinely putting the cart before the horse, we might as well get all the information. That portion of that deal has nothing to do with us. We don't get to make that decision. The issue seems to be that folks believe this is all about one potential project. To say that this PUD has nothing to do with that one project would be disingenuous. But to say that this PUD has it all and encompassing about that one project is also disingenuous. So let's have a good faith discussion about proposed ordinance policy. The work that local governments, state governments, national governments engage in is always informed by businesses, developers, voters. Government bodies are not the sole incubators of ideas for improvement. In fact, many jaded, cynical people would actually think the opposite. I'm gonna wrap it up, and thank you for allowing me this time. You guys know I'm usually a well-reserved person who doesn't voice too much too often. Yeah. But the whispered insinuations of nefarious intent during this process, for me, have bordered on absurd, with attempts to even impugn our town manager's character, and sometimes mine on occasion. Now, I campaigned knocking every door in this town, and I was elected by the voting public based on the values I embodied and the energy of my ideas. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time championing myself, because I did that during the campaign, and it's not my favorite thing. But I will defend Scott Davis. Scott and I have not seen eye to eye on everything for 4+ years of service. There have been many a times where we have disagreed. But I know where he comes from. I know that he was a police officer, that he was a chief of police, a council member, and a mayor. He also went to school, got degrees in real estate and land development, a master's in public administration, and a doctorate in law and policy. That's the resume of someone who's dedicated to public service, which is what we're all up here for. His only crime seems to be following the longest tenured town manager in the Commonwealth. And honestly, no matter who took that role, we all know it was going to be tough. So in the meantime, we've massively paid down our debt, put ourselves in the best financial footing we've been on since I've been here, and we're professionalizing our operation. Why this and why now? Because we are a town of opportunity. We're a town seeking smart growth, a town with lots of pieces in the right places and poised to do even more good work. Because we are a town looking to increase revenue with tax base instead of tax raises. Because we want to welcome people and embrace our mission to provide efficient, effective, and equitable service and encourage diverse growth in our charming community, which is our new mission statement. Because we aspire to our new vision statement, which is to be a vibrant place to live, work, and recreate. Because we hope that we talk about affordable housing and that we mean it. PUD might not be the answer. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be the smartest person, because I am by far not. But I think we should have as many tools at our disposal as we need to get to our goals. The process is a long way off. Long way off. It's in its infancy. They just saw their first version of an ordinance in the last Planning Commission meeting. We're a long way off from this thing getting anywhere. And there's plenty of opportunity for input. Even if it ever came to pass, the potential projects would still have to be put into a master plan. That plan would be debated by Planning Commission with public input, then it would come before council for the same treatment. We can adopt as many tools as we want. This one allows us to decide on every project. The public who is opposing this PUD because they fear a potential project will have their moment to step up to the mic. And if your thought is, I don't want to have to voice my concerns or I don't want to have to make these decisions, well, that is why we are here. That is the role of the public. That is the role of public officials. Our comp plan says that through comprehensive planning and appropriate land use decisions, we hope to preserve the charm, beauty, and history of Farmville while accommodating growth, encouraging diverse and affordable housing, and promoting an efficient and safe transportation system. We want to provide for the needs of a diverse community with quality, affordable housing for all. Key land use strategies include coordination with Longwood University to improve the connection between university and town, the promotion of infill and redevelopment rather than growing outward, because we don't have a lot of land. Now, Farmville Housing Association, I like their project too. It could be a good project as well. But all of that is separate from this. It's separate from this PUD ordinance and whether or not we think this will be useful into the future as we plan for the future of Farmville. And to somehow predispose that, one, it's not a good idea for localities to interact with developers and businesses goes against what we've been doing. We passed a comp plan with sign ordinances that our businesses came to us and said, this isn't working for us, and so we amended them because we recognized that in order to get to where we needed to get to, we had to make a change. We didn't say, no, sorry, we've got to wait 5 years and we'll come back to this. Like, this is the way it works. So my clarion call when I ran for office was decency, fortitude, community. It remains the same. What struck my nerve was that the very thing I said I would be a firewall against, I was starting to see in our community, where people were taking a disagreement about an issue and turning it into personal attacks. And that I don't have much time for. So that's my piece. I apologize. I don't often do this ever. But I wanted to put it down so that people knew where I stood on it. The floor is open, and I welcome all discussion, and I want to hear from folks' ideas, what their thoughts are. It is okay to disagree. It's perfectly fine. The 5 of us who have been up here for the last 4 years, there's a lot of trust built up here. The 2 new guys, you will soon learn that this group operates well together and we trust each other. And we welcome you into the fold. So bring your ideas, bring your thoughts to it as well. So Thank you for hearing me out, bearing with me. I open the floor to anybody who'd like to say something.
I have comments, if I may. I too kind of had to write something up. I wanted to, I gave a lot of thought to my content. I didn't want to forget something. It's all I feel important to me. Some people at our public meetings have stated that we do not have a housing shortage. I disagree. Yes, there are quite a few empty houses that were renovated for student use. Unfortunately, the supply for these properties is significantly higher than the current demand. I feel we do need additional housing. I agree with the general thought that townhouses and condos would be a great addition to our town. I also feel there is a shortage for decent affordable housing and rentals for lower income families. Having said that, I question whether R1 is suitable for multifamily usage. Let me read the description of R1 from Ordinance 196, which we adopted in June of 2020. R1, low-density residential purpose and intent. Low-density residential district R1 encompasses low-density single-family residential areas, both existing and planned. This district should provide a suitable environment for families who desire quiet, spacious home sites with the amenities of suburban living without the fear of encroachment of dissimilar uses. I've heard from a small sampling of residents that they do fear encroachment of dissimilar use. Feels to me by including R1 in a PUD overlay that the town would be changing a fundamental promise, if you will, that an R1 area remains single family. I also believe we should look at possible changes to R2 and R3, which could help meet the needs for different types of housing and potentially retail that we would like to add to our town. Having said that, those changes must be agreeable to those live in those areas also. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
instead of being at the end, would council mind if I shared where staff comes from with when we propose things to council and why?
Fire away.
So let me hit this target from the beginning of, as the mayor stated, Better Housing Coalition is a topic that's been in the community since they presented their idea for Longwood Village. And that you all know, part of my job and staff's job when someone wants to develop in the town of Farmville is for us to work with them and see how and if we can make that a realization. So the elephant in the room is correct. Better Housing Coalition needs something for the second phase. There's no doubt about that. From what the public gave input at a meeting that they had for public input. If you remember, you could go and put stickers on a map of what you like the best. Townhomes, assisted living, houses that could be eventually purchased. So those types of things. It would have a varying, diverse styles of housing. They asked the former director of community development and I in a conversation about how is there a method to reduce parking? Is there a method to reduce lot sizes? Is there a method to change some of those formal regulations? And the discussion did start in saying, yeah, those are questions and topics of a plan unit development type ordinance. So did the idea originate, if you ask me that question, from conversations with a developer on how do we help you develop in the town of Farmville? The answer is yes. The answer is also yes, that I will do that for any developer that wants to do a business or that wants to do a housing project in Farmville. So that one entity did not, this is not being done specifically for them. Did it make us think of other properties that could benefit from this? The answer to that question is also yes. It's why we showed them in presentations during those three public input meetings. And where we get our guidance actually comes from you. There's 100 and some pages in a comprehensive plan that is adopted by council. I'm not going to read the beginning because the mayor already did that. He stole my thunder. What I will say is, in developing this plan, and it's in here, the tabs I've got is to show that I have more than one document, more than two documents. I have several documents that for me to do my job and for staff to do the job that I expect for us together as a team has been adopted by all of you or previous council. Comprehensive plan is one of them. In the first community workshop in August of 23rd of 2018, 76 people attended. In small working groups, participants were asked to identify local strengths and weaknesses. One of the weaknesses that was identified by people in the community was housing choice and affordability. A second workshop was had on October the 23rd, 2018. 42 people had came. In this, we asked, and this was done by consultants, remember, it wasn't just staff. These were professional planners. No tie to Farmville. Asked people to be in small teams, worked on goals and projects and ideas for their community, marking their concepts on a map in response to one of three major themes: growth and development, transportation, and community character and quality of life. Growth and development teams agreed that established and historic neighborhoods should be protected from growth, while new development should be welcomed in specific areas. Community survey was done between December of 18 and January of 19. We had 484 responses. Now, you're probably thinking that's really low. It's really actually not. It's a pretty good response for people to take their time to send you something back. Most time it goes to file 13, the trash. In those responses, highlighted in the comp plan, one of the questions was, should Farmville welcome new growth and development? And the choices were both residential and commercial, commercial growth only, residential growth only. Farmville should not welcome new growth. 81% of the respondents said yes to both residential and commercial growth. 2% said no, Farmville should not welcome new growth. Another question, what should Farmville focus on as it plans for its future? 70% said providing amenities and attract, retain young people. You got to have housing for them. 24% said promoting diverse housing opportunities. in our population and housing section, the goal that everybody approved, provide for all needs of diverse community with quality, affordable housing for all. The number 2 strategy was support the work of Habitat for Humanity and other organizations that increase affordable housing in Farmville. It's what Farmville Housing wants to do. It's what Better Housing Coalition wants to do. Further on, it says under housing, public input results point to a need for more diversity in Farmville's housing stock. It said in the profile, 3,114 housing units at the time in Farmville. 53.5% were single-family detached homes. Farmville was split roughly even between renter-occupied and owner-occupied housing units. Affordability. Affordable communities are attractive for families and individuals to work and live in. Affordability can be measured in housing cost, comparative price of goods, and income, and is used to compare the overall cost of living in Farmville compared to the region and the nation. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines cost-burdened families as those who pay more than 30% of their income for housing. About 22% of Farmville's mortgaged housing units are considered cost-burdened according to this definition. For renters, approximately 44.8% of units are cost-burdened. A need for affordable housing. Housing initiatives. Housing initiatives in Farmville should provide opportunities for the construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of housing to meet current and future needs of residents. Providing for a diverse population means ensuring that housing options are available at all income levels, including families and individuals at or near poverty. The next paragraph, through this comprehensive plan's public survey, as I mentioned earlier, Farmville residents expressed a desire for new housing development. Single-family homes, housing for seniors and the elderly, and duplexes or townhomes were the most desired types of housing, balancing the citizens' wish for maintaining a small-town feel while promoting growth and attracting young professionals to the town is a key endeavor. Future housing stock can be managed using the town's zoning ordinance, adjusting regulations to allow more housing variety and extending mixed-use zoning into commercial areas to allow for select projects on larger parcels that mix a variety of housing with commercial uses. It has a ring of what planning and development is. Existing conditions. While Farmville is an important commercial hub, there is a need for additional shopping services. That's in our economy section. Not to be lost. Under land use, the goal is plan for a balance of compatible land uses, meeting the community and economic needs of a growing town. Growing town. Not stable. Status quo. One of the strategies is reduce minimum lot sizes to encourage more compact, efficient, and affordable residential development. We did that actually in the zoning rewrite because we took some R1 lot sizes and made them smaller. But we also heard from people in certain subdivisions not to make them too small because they didn't want certain houses built in their subdivision. So what's the method of that? An ordinance that allows for people to set lot sizes, and we determine if that's a good fit. Promote infill and redevelopment in appropriate areas of existing development rather than growing the town outward. Meaning we have a lot of undeveloped land that can be built on. Over half of Farmville's residential uses are low density, single family. Lack of affordable housing and diversity of housing options was brought up throughout the public engagement process for this plan. Mindfully increasing moderate and higher density residential as well as mixed use land uses will help address this community need and encourage infill and development. The future land use map is a common comprehensive plan element that is intended to show an idealized picture of land use in long-term future, 20 or more years from now. Future land use can be thought of as a picture of what zoning in the town could look like over the next 20 or more years. This map does not change what is allowed on a piece of property right now, although it could be used by a property owner to help justify rezoning a parcel. Changes to land use will happen slowly over time as a result of individual projects that add residential density, add commercial space, or convert one land use to another. In weighing development application, Farmville staff, Planning Commission, and Town Council should be mindful of the future land use map as well as the needs of a changing town, the desire of Farmville residents for quality development, and the economic necessity of improving the town's tax base. Urban residential is in the future conditions. States up to 24 units per acre. Mixed use commercial up to 24 units per acre. Using the plan. It's a dynamic, evolving, and changing to reflect the needs of the community. So the whole premise that you've heard from people before about wait till the next review, don't make any changes. I don't know, I haven't worked anywhere that's done that before because it's evolving. You can make a change once a month, 3 times a year, whenever. You don't have to wait. The state code does say every 5 years, you do have to assess it at least once every 5 years. Under using the plan, land use regulations. The process for development approvals, including rezoning and subdivision plats, are a central means of implementing the comprehensive plan. The zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, landscaping, parking, and signage standards, and other land use and development standards and procedures are at the forefront in implementing the comprehensive plan. The town's land use regulations are the primary plan implementation tool and therefore should be kept up to date along with the plan as conditions and circumstances warrant. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this. Review and update. Finally, the continuous review and progress monitoring holds everyone accountable to the town's long-range vision. 52.22230 requires that comprehensive plans be reviewed every 5 years. As I said, it has to be reviewed at least once every 5 years. However, annual reviews and revisions of ordinances and plans is considered a best practice. Annual review allows for new engagement, continued partnering, and any course corrections that may be necessary to successfully reach the established goals. While the plan should change and grow with community, Changes to the future land use map, policies, and strategies should not be taken lightly or without meaningful citizen input. Lee and I looked at this when we were thinking, not just about how to help an entity, but what's the impact for the future of Farmville? The other guiding document that is easily to come by, because you just passed it, it's our work plan, it's our strategic plan. The mayor said the vision, the mission, which included in that and says, encourage diverse growth. A value. So if affordable housing is an issue because you might have some low-income people or not, a value of us is embracing diversity, which meant for you all and us now, open-minded, unprejudiced, inclusive, respectful, and seek common ground. A strategic goal area was community development and land use. Through comprehensive planning and appropriate land use decisions, preserve the charm, beauty, and history of Farmville, while accommodating growth, encouraging diverse and affordable housing, and promoting an efficient and safe transportation system. I appreciate the mayor's comments about, for me, and I do appreciate that. This job is about how can we make it better? Not just for us, but people we won't even know one day because we might not be here living in the town of Farmville. I gave you, at the Planning Commission, I provided you all with, that was just a example ordinance. We don't have to use that one. I gave the Planning Commission and you towns that have plan unit development, or they call it something different than that, but the premise is the same if you read it. Town of Ashland is one. 7,565 people, 7 square miles. Town of Bedford, 6,642 people, 8.75 square miles. Town of Blacksburg, their population is a little set off by Virginia Tech. 44,826, 19.77 square miles. Town of Colonial Beach, 3,937 folks, 2.45 square miles. Town of Dumfries, 5,687, 1.55 square miles. Town of Front Royal, 15,155, 10.52 square miles. Town of Herndon, 24,532, 4.29 square miles. Town of Leesburg, 48,908, 12.4 square miles. Town of Luray, 4,794 people, 4.86 square miles. Town of Purcellville, 9,040 people, 3.8 square miles. Town of South Boston, 7,932, 13.15 square miles. Town of South Hill, 4,709, 9.85 square miles. Town of Warrenton, 10,109, 4.38 square miles. Town of Woodstock, 5,861, 3.81 square miles. Most of these towns are not any larger than the town of Farmville. And I'm not just saying this because I work here, but I'd put us against any one of them. but we don't have the same tools. That's all I'm asking to do. And it's your decision. You make the decision for what's best for the community. My goal is to provide you with what I think professionally is best. And at the end of the day, if you choose not to, I'm okay. I just ask you then, let's work together. How do we solve it? How do we make what is written in several documents, is it really what you want? Is it really what we want? One. If not, if it is, then how do we achieve it? What is a method to achieve it? What's a better method? And if it's not, we got some work to do because we got to change some documents. But I'm here to help you and make this town better every day. Thank you.
I will say, I did today receive an email from the town manager of Scottsville, who had heard that I had contacted their mayor, and he sent over their PUD ordinance that they've been banding about for a while. I just got it this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to read through it, but I will pass that around to everybody as well. He also commended us, said he had read the Herald article about our council retreat and about the strategic goals and work plans we had collectively put down, and said that we were doing an amazing job and we were far ahead of other localities in our pursuit of certain goals and strategic plans. So just kudos to you guys for the collective effort at the retreat. The floor is still open for anybody who would like to speak.
I have a question. So if the PUD goes away, does the Better Housing Coalition go away? That's my question. Is it solely, is that deal solely contingent on this ordinance going through? That's my question.
That's a question for them. I mean, that's definitely a question for them, but at the end of the day, whether they're here or not, the method of plan, the point I want to make, and I think the mayor has made, is a form of plan unit development is in the best interest, I believe, to do affordable housing and economic development.
Okay.
Right, I think ultimately,
Go ahead.
ultimately, if, and this is a highly hypothetical, if the planned unit development ordinance were to be taken up, get through planning commission, it's going to take a long time for them to look at all different versions of ordinances, craft what they think we want Farmville to do with an ordinance. That ordinance then comes to us, comes to you all. You all can debate it. You could say, I don't want that. I want to put this in here, send it back to them. And then they got to go through the whole process. That's just the way bureaucracy works. Most people say it's too slow. I actually like it because it provides all kinds of checks and balances and input points. But then say you got to a point where, you could conceivably craft PUD parameters by which that project would never fit. You could also create PUD ordinance parameters, and then that project down the road comes up before you as a body, and you can say, no, it doesn't fit what we want for this town. Like, you get to decide that. I think sometimes with this cart before the horse, like, are we seeing a preemptive effort to ensure somebody doesn't have to speak out against something when the time comes? And it's like, let's debate the ordinance itself and whether or not it proves or could be a fruitful tool for the future of Farmville. If it then results in this project coming before these bodies, they get to decide whether or not that project goes forward. That's the beauty of that. You could say no, and then all of a sudden somebody else has that section of land. You know what I mean? So That at least is my interpretation.
If all the pieces of the puzzle fit, what's the soonest that it will come before us? That's the question that I'm getting.
Well, your work plan says I should deliver a draft to you by July of 2023 that you approve. So just don't hold that against my evaluation. How's that?
That's fine.
That's the biggest question that I'm getting. You know, the groundwork has been laid, and you all did a wonderful job in spelling it out again as for what we've gone through over the years. So I don't want to see it not be what we put, the effort that we put forth, not to have to look at something that we can pick apart or we can agree upon or disagree upon. But the timeline is the biggest thing I'm hearing. I'm hearing that we're rushing, but how can you rush when it's a couple of years out, you know? So that's my question that I'm hearing and I brought here tonight, and I'm pretty sure it was answered, and I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, is it possible to, is a PUD overlay over the whole town, or can you leave out R1 as an example, if that were is that an option?
It doesn't, I mean, someone would have to, the way we are suggesting it is, you would have to rezone a piece of property. And so that's the first step. So if it's R1 and you don't want to rezone an R1 piece of property to PUD, you just say no. It didn't get rezoned. And then the second step is if it's rezoned, then there's a master plan of what they're going to develop there that you can agree to. Or not.
So let me, I'm hearing you, but I don't think I'm getting it. So it overlays the entire town?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't overlay anything. It's not an overlay district.
Okay, that's.
It's something that'll be on the books, but we're not rezoning any piece of property. If you were to pass a type of plan unit development ordinance,
Okay.
it would be an ordinance in our zoning ordinances. But we're not actually gonna say, start rezoning properties. One, you can't unless the property owners has an opportunity, or wants that at this point. So they have to come to you and ask for rezoning.
So I guess, so again, I think all of our residential areas are important, clearly. Having said that, what I've heard from our folks who live in R1, so they really shouldn't feel, for instance, you know, if our goal is to increase multifamily, condos, you name it, they shouldn't feel threatened by that if they live in R1 when they just, and I can't envision, you know, our R1 description, as I read, is pretty defined. So is there a threat to that area by?
Are you talking about like an adjacent parcel? Let's say an adjacent parcel is, I mean, it's that way right now. If you go, Cabell backs up to a commercial district. And back then, when that was developed, it's not like our zoning ordinance now. If you're a commercial district, there's a requirement of a certain amount of buffer and a type of buffer to be done to the residential district. Y'all didn't have that before when that was developed. There was no, so our laws now are better for residential than it was before.
Well, I understand the commercial, but let's say condos or similar.
Yeah, so you would ask for a certain amount of buffering. Let's say it's a well, commercial is the land that's vacant, so the piece that could be developed on right beside Walmart, the front's Main Street. So use that piece of parcel. It's 20 acres. A portion of it is visible by, neighbors that are residential, but you can build in buffer requirements. Like,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject. Can I give a little example that would be, I know it'll probably never happen, but let's take the soccer field on First and Second Avenue. I think what you're getting at is, what if Longwood decided they wanted to sell that, they didn't need it anymore? I know it's hypothetical, completely hypothetical. And somebody decided they wanted to put a PUD there and put in condos. I don't think the people in that neighborhood would be very happy about that. And I think that's,
then you vote down the master
I
plan.
understand that. But I think that's what he's asking, though, is,
That example was actually given to me by a resident in R1.
Yeah, but then you just say no.
I mean, you vote down the
Yeah, you
master
just vote
plan.
down
You
the
don't
master
rezone it. It has to be rezoned, and then it has to have a vote on a master plan.
I guess, one might call it paranoia, but, it could be if you had a council that was conscious of their, of citizen input, and in a planning commission the same way, and they were voting according to what appeared to be the public sentiment. That works great. I mean, I'm just, again, this was presented to me. What if you had a pro-growth, at any cost, planning commission, and same with a council? Could something be,
I think,
That what if, that's not, I mean, you can't not set policy because you don't know the future of who's gonna be up here.
no,
You-
these are the questions I just
Yeah,
wanted to get
I
out in
mean-
the public.
I think the way I think about that and is, because it is a hypothetical, right? Like, what if somebody, and people are fearful of it. That's the exact, abutment, that's the exact issue you get with affordable housing, is every time the conversation, like my employees, every time the conversation of affordable housing comes up, everybody gets, it might be next to me. So that's the issue, right? And that's
Not about affordable housing in this case.
But any kind of development they don't want in their backyard, there's always a NIMBY response. No matter what any locality does zoning wise, there's always going to be a NIMBY response, no matter what you decide, no matter what happens. But in this case, it's the same as sort of being like, there's some localities now that are doing away wholly with single home zoning and saying everything is mixed use. There's some localities that are like ADUs everywhere, accessory dwelling units everywhere. Like, we don't know what a future body may decide up here. They could decide do away with single-family home zoning altogether. You know what I mean? Like, so we can't, you can't think of, I think you can't, to Scott's point, you can't plan in the future with like the hypotheticals of what a collective body may do, because there's all kinds of things a collective body may do. But this body,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
this body gets to decide at this moment, no, that doesn't fit. Our citizens don't think that fits. We don't think that fits. But it's the same thing. Any body would have the opportunity to say no to certain zoning changes.
I think the biggest thing is not a rubber stamp. So it's not going to, just everything that comes through, we're going to have an opportunity to look at it and say yes or no. It's not just automatically going to go through because it's been presented.
I think, I mean, that makes complete sense. I agree with that logic. I just think that there's, folks who will be concerned unless they understand the process that, that this council probably, or who knows in the future, but I know I would look very seriously at any public request, not just in R1, but I just think R1 by definition is single family, and, that's going to kind of dictate my thoughts going forward is, I'd be very cautious in putting not anything to do with affordable housing at all. That wasn't the intent. It's about multifamily or duplex or whatever.
But those could be affordable housing.
Pardon?
Not try to
sorry?
muddy the waters.
No.
But all of those, but duplexes, apartments, all those can be affordable housing. What I'm saying is that
No, I think that people are fearful of anything other than single family, whatever, however you
Sure,
define it,
sure.
whatever the rent or house payment is, whatever. That's all I was really just trying to get across is I'm representing people who are telling me things. And I want to put it out there. Thank you.
Well, can you explain to me, so, like, Midtown, so to me, in my mind, that's a PUD. I mean, that's like a PUD to me. So how is that not a PUD? Sunchase, to me, is like, so,
No,
So
no,
how is
I mean,
that built?
it's owned by the it had to meet zoning regulation, well,
So-
whatever the zoning regulations were at the time.
so explain to me how that was zoned when it looks to me like the same
If I were here, I
concept.
could give you the 100%
Yeah.
of how it was zoned, but I don't know.
So, you know.
But it's in a commercial district.
Okay,
And our current commercial district, if it were to happen again, allows for mixed-use development.
okay.
But it's got to meet the parameters of what that commercial development is.
Okay.
With a plan unit development, you have the developer has the opportunity to create spaces that don't necessarily conform. There's not set parameters a lot of times, if you read some of those that I provided you,
Yeah.
about lot sizes, about what they're contiguous to, and helps with having more open space. We can make them have open space. In a traditional zoning, unless they voluntarily proffer, we can't make someone have a park. We can't make someone have walking trails. We can't make someone have X amount of green space.
Okay. Okay.
We're building, plan unit development is more of building a community within this community of different styles of whether it's just housing or whether it's housing and economic businesses.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, in my mind,
Did everybody understand that?
in my mind, the idea of, like Midtown doesn't have a lot of green space. It's just paved. And so, in my mind, it's like, can we create, an overarching vision where we talk about interconnectivity of trails and getting to, potentially pedestrian bike studies in the future. And we talk about river walks, and we talk about all these projects that we can begin to connect together, that maybe with a PUD, maybe there's a potential to where you could, create these developments that have green space that then tie into our other green spaces and connecting trails and systems that way, as opposed to just a blanket pavement concrete, because it's got to fit that commercial zoning, right? With the PUD, you can sort of say, hey, how about we want this, and like to Scott's point, we want trails that connect to our other trails. We want a way for people to be able to navigate this without cars, So we can begin to put sort of parameters on it that fit the vision we want for the future.
Go ahead, Sally, I'll elaborate after.
When you talk about affordable housing, I have two different concepts of affordable housing. I have the Better Housing Coalition affordable housing, which is at the price mark, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. So I have the price mark of probably the $400 to $600 range using vouchers, okay?
Not all of them.
Well, some of them, all right. And then after talking to Jake's group is a little bit higher, I have that. So am I on the target of that's what affordable housing, that's what we're looking at in terms of affordable housing, probably no more than $1,200 a month, probably, or less than that, $1,000 a month, is that right? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get in my head, what affordable housing is, from vouchers to what we talked to, if y'all talked to Jake, what Jake talked about.
Well, I think it looks at, you know, what is our income levels in this area? You know, what can people afford? So affordable housing here is gonna be different than the city of Richmond.
Right.
So we would need to, that's what you need to know is what are the income levels? And it's in here.
Yeah,
It tells
I
you
saw
what those
that.
income
Yeah,
levels
I
are.
saw that.
But are those, and here's a question about the income levels.
That was
and-
done in 2000, that was pre-COVID. I mean,
And,
so.
right. But as far as the income levels go in there, are those based on just the residents of the town of Farmville, or does that include the Longwood students that live here and have no income, and that average gets skewed way down because of a lot of zeros? I mean, you know, the average of 0 and 100 is 50. So I don't know the answer to that question.
I guess my question is, what, if we want people to afford a rent or a house, what is, are you looking at, because that's what the developer's gonna do. What is the purpose for the what is your intention? What's the council's
No, I
intention
just wanted to
of
get,
knowing what that, is it from a standpoint of making sure we have a certain number and that we don't go over a number? I mean, I'm just trying to get
No,
No.
a feel
no.
of,
I wanted to get in my mind what affordable
Yeah.
meant in terms
Affordable
of.
could mean
Yeah.
one thing to you and another thing to me. That's where the problem is.
Right.
And
That's
affordable,
where I'm getting at as well.
affordable is not necessarily the same as low income. Right? That's one portion of affordable.
Affordable means different things to different people.
It truly does. Also, developers, if I'm correct, look at density more. How many houses, how many roofs, and how many people underneath those roofs? That seems to be part of the equation as well. I was looking at the PUD you sent out, I think it was pulled from Lexington, and I understand that this is just kind of a template that we can work from. But the density was kind of confusing when it came to, I think one of the planning commission members mentioned, if you've got a 3-acre lot and 30% of that has to be for green space, what happens to the density? Does that take the 24 people per acre and add that extra 24 to the 2 acres that are left, therefore having, I don't even know if you could fit that many people in the restrictions of height and everything that's available. But that's one of the questions. We really should focus on density because that's at the end of the day what people are looking for when they develop these projects. They want to walk away with some sort of profit, I would imagine. That's my comment for that.
I'll go ahead and go since I'm very, everybody knows that I'm very new to this and I'm learning as we go, and I've spent a lot of time reading the zoning, trying to figure out everything, and I'm looking at, like Sally said, a lot of the areas that are already similar to this. They may not be exactly like this, and I understand that Sunchase had to go through some hoops to get everything like they have it, and downtown here, the Midtown is similar as well, and things like that, and I realized that, and my question is coming, but you know, there are some, like you just said, there are some zoning that address mixed use, and there are no density requirements on those zoning things, and you know, we as in the previous council spent a lot of time rezoning the whole town to have it be the way it is now, thinking, I'm sure at the time, this is great, we're really moving forward, and we're not gonna have to make huge changes to this right now, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a huge change, as we're doing, we're looking at, okay, what are we going to do in, how is this going to affect everybody in 20 to 30 years? How is, stuff like that. So I know that's how that, I'm sure, I don't know, I am sure that is how everybody tried to rezone it at that time. You were talking about some of these other towns, and I realize, and you and I discussed this, that some of those towns do kind of meet Farmville, but I feel like a lot of the towns on that list were bedroom communities for Northern Virginia, so I kind of would feel like they don't really meet it as well. There are other localities, and we may have to see who has done this, but are there other localities that had a planned unit development and have totally nixed it and thrown it out because they decided that it's not the best thing for them? That's another thing to look at, is what other communities have had it in the past and no longer have it anymore. I also wanted to put out there that, you were talking about the folks at the community organization, the community information sessions. Not all people that are for or against something are going to come to those. And I wanted to definitely put it out there that I have had, and I'm not saying I'm all for or all against. I'm just saying I want to put it out there, as Dan said, with the people in his area that are concerned about things. I do have I'm pretty sure, the largest number of citizens in my district. I mean, it's very large. And when it's a lot. It was a lot of walking, and I know Brian had to do a lot of walking for everybody, but I did knock on a fair number of doors as well. I've had over 30 people that are residents of the town, not just my area, but the town, the county, that are very concerned about the planned unit development, as well as many business owners that were concerned about it and had questions. And I know these questions need to be answered in general, and we just need to work on those. I think I don't really have any main questions. One of the things that people ask me is we say that we need diverse housing. What about the housing that has already been approved and no one has done anything about? Nobody has built the townhomes that I realize they're not in the town of Farmville, but right there next to Crestview. That's a chunky units that have been approved for a number of years and never been built, as well as let's think about the Pearson group that is supposed to be doing the 52 units off of Andrews, or I can't remember which, Vernon Street. That changes name so many times it's hard to keep track. Those units, nobody's done anything with those. They've started, never been finished. There are also a number of places that in the town, as well as the county, that have room for expansion and nobody's done it. There are some condos in town, and they are right behind Food Lion. And it looks, when you ride in there, that there is parking area and room for expansion in there, and nobody's made that expansion. So I realize that we need to have more housing, but what about the ones that are already approved and nobody's doing anything about? That's my main question, is what can we do to facilitate those folks to get them to get going and do something, instead of just sitting on it and this vacant land that has a zoning approval and changes, where, we've got a lot of stuff in our toolbox, like you said. Can we make small ordinance changes to our current zoning to fill those needs of what a PUD would do. And in that, I mean, you know, can we make it where if somebody wants to do something, a conditional use in a particular zone, we can say, yeah, you can do that, but we'd like to see some green space. So that's what I've got for all of this, and I'll let y'all talk about that.
To add to his question about other towns that had the planned unit development, you said somebody got rid of them or didn't have it anymore?
The only one I spoke of was the contrast between the town of Ashland, which has one. They didn't use it for the project they initially instituted it for. Like, they had a project specific to it when they adopted it, but they didn't use it for that project. They are using it for a project currently. The town of Scottsville has debated planned unit development, but has never passed it. It's kind of been shelved, and they, that's the one where it was specific to a project. They had a tire factory there that they wanted to turn into apartments and increase revenue, and there was disagreement. First, people wanted it, then they didn't. They end up shelving the planned unit development, sitting on a shelf. I think VCU planning students just recently did a 2022 study and suggested again that Scottsville should do a planned unit development ordinance. And so it's supposed to come back up again, but they have not passed one.
I have, maybe we could look at Williamsburg's situation. I've heard that they've had it and then dropped it. I don't know the details. And that's not something I've read, but something I've heard. Maybe we could look at that.
I had all kinds of stuff I was throwing at Scott the other day. I was like, how about we do away with minimum parking? And then he said that was too much to add on to the plate. So it shot down my idea. But I was like, there's so many tools that you could potentially use in the zoning process. I don't think there's any heartache in the idea that we continue to search out more and more tools that we could utilize, as long as there are tools that we can keep on a shelf and pull down at our disposal. You know what I mean? They're not by right zoning anywhere. Now, there's a lot of localities that are doing by right zoning and amending things so that projects that we have that people may not agree with are by right. But this, at least from my perspective, gives this council and any council strict control over each of those projects. Somebody presents a master plan that they want to do on a piece of a parcel of property. Citizens get to voice their concerns. Planning Commission gets to bandy it about. It can either go forward or not, and then if it does, council can bandy it around. It can go forward or not. Every step, there's a control mechanism. We may never even take it off the shelf. It could just sit up there the whole time, and we just look at it and go, oh, look, we got that tool, and it never gets used. So I guess my only thing I wanted to voice was I didn't feel like it was that monumental of a shift. We talked about you do these comp plans and it's a 20-year plan. Yes, everything we do has repercussions 20 years down the road, every decision point we make. We had those subdivision ordinances that we passed at the same time we passed the comp plan. And like I said earlier, then businesses came to us and said those sign ordinances don't work. And so we had to go back and revisit them. I've heard that some of them think they still don't work. So we may have to revisit it again. But that's just, that's the process, right? Like, that's how we do work. We've had businesses come to us. Tommy doesn't want me to talk about this, but we've had businesses come to us and talk to us about streets like North Street and whether or not we could shift traffic on that street. There was other businesses who didn't want us to shift that traffic on that street. We talked about it collectively as a group. We thought about public safety. We thought about lots of aspects of it, and we decided in the end what we thought collectively was best for the community, for the town. That's what I hope we do in each of these decision points, is we are not making a decision based off of one business coming to us. That may spur the conversation, but we're not making a decision based off one business coming to us, or one friend coming to us, or one person coming to us, or this person. We're basing it off of a collective of information. We're thinking about what's in the best interest of the town. And then we're making that decision point. And when we think about the best interest of the town, it should extend past our generation into the ones that follow. So I got that.
One more thing on that, you're talking about they get, and this is a clarification I would like just, and it might be for everybody, we can approve or disapprove anything through the PUD, if somebody brings their master plan. But at that point, are they already rezoned as a PUD? Because didn't you say that they come in and get the PUD zoning and then they have to bring the master plan to us to have it approved, and we can approve or disapprove? I mean, that seems kind of, I hate to say this, I've heard it once already tonight and I don't want to say it again, but sounds like cart before the horse on that one to me. Wouldn't you want to know what their master plan is before you approve any zoning change? Because, now you've changed the zoning completely on this piece of property.
They will, for the rezoning, they have to do a preliminary plan.
Okay.
Who's our current zoning administrator?
No. It falls to Ashley as the interim at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ashley's wearing a lot of hats, isn't she?
She's the interim planning director.
Should we give her a raise?
We already did.
Give her a bigger raise?
I don't think that's gonna matter for the amount, it's time.
Regarding the cart before the horse. Yeah, absolutely. So this situation, I really appreciate the openness and honesty of this body, and particularly the mayor and his words early on, and everything you said, Scott, coming out of the comprehensive plan is things I 100% agree with. I really evaluated all that, and I think it's a great tool for us, moving us. What?
You were at some of those meetings?
I was at some of those meetings, yes. Yes, I was. So what I'm trying to get at is that this opens up a great tool, great resource, could be used for good, could be used for not so good. But it's up to us to make the decision as whether we let that happen or not. There are several areas in town where I could think a PUD would work really, really well, where we've got an existing housing situation where if there was some way we could convert those or put commercial inside the housing. I'm thinking particularly my ward, which is the smallest ward in the town.
Let me clarify that. That's just size. Wards are divided by population, so I don't want everybody to think that population, it has to be within a certain percentage legally by federal law. You all are talking about size demographically, not population. Let me make that clear for everyone, please.
Well, anyhow, I think the PUD is could very well be a good tool that we add to our tool shop, so to speak. The question is that what you mentioned with Ashland, Brian, was they created a PUD for a situation that they were going to approve or hoping to establish, and I don't know what that was. That is kind of where I am a little concerned, where we can kind of change the rules, the existing rules, to suit the needs of a project that's in front of us, front and center. And I can think of an example that's very close to me a couple years back, where this would have been not such a good tool for me and for the people who lived around me. Some people agreed with what was happening at that corner. Some people definitely did not agree with what was happening with the corner, and especially the way that it might change our historic nature up and down that corridor. Now, the question arises is like, is that the best way, the cart before the horse, to get to where we need to be regarding this big, important change that we're talking about? And it is a living document. I don't want to stop the idea that we need to wait that long to get this done, to amend our comprehensive plan. Not at all. But I do want to be really careful about putting this kind of tool in front of, it sends the wrong message to developers. In a way, it kind of says, well, they'll work with us no matter what. We can do whatever we want to. And they'll change the laws or the rules around it for us. And I just hope that if we go forward with this process, we do it a lot of diligence, a lot of due diligence here, answer all the questions. And I do not think, and I do think that it's important that something like this, a tool where we're talking about mixed use and perhaps, and hopefully, some commercial interests coming in, because, you know, a fiscal analysis, an idea of what this is going to do to our economics, you know whether we're investing properly. Sure, things cost money a lot up front, a lot of times, but will they pan out down the road? Well, we can do that. Those are things we can sort through. Make our best guess scenario, make our worst guess scenario, and hope we land somewhere in between. So those are my thoughts.
Didn't Rhett ask for that in the planning commission? Didn't Rhett ask for?
There was a discussion about like economic impact, in the ordinance, for sure. Yeah, I don't think we're, I know that in speaking with all of you individually recently, which was funny, Tommy pegged it, and he was like, you always seem to read the wind and preemptively call. And it was funny because I had no idea you all had showed up at the planning commission meeting when I called. And it just kind of worked out that way. But in those conversations, it was apparent that there was a lot of hesitation. And we're hearing that now. There's hesitation and concern. And I think that's valid. That is why we do this. That's why we discuss this stuff in public. That's why we have these mics in front of us. And I think that that process moves as quickly as we want it to. That planned unit development is in its very infancy in the Planning Commission. They've gotten one example to look at, and now they have a few more. This is going to be a long process. Right.
If the majority want to continue down that path, because we've already spent a considerable amount of staff time to this point, that there's not any sense, if there's not an appetite for moving forward.
Absolutely.
And I'm not
should know
asking
that.
for that decision tonight. What I'm saying is to after everything we've talked about, we need to come back and say, is this what do you even want to move forward with this? Because we've already spent a considerable amount of time, community input, all these things, but there's no sense in putting any more time and effort if the majority of you don't want to see something further.
All right, I've held my tongue long enough.
Go on, Tommy.
I agree with you 100%. I think everybody in this room or with this group favors a PUD. I don't think it's any question about it. I think we all want what's best for the town of Farmville. My biggest concern is slow the roll, do your homework, let the planning commission do their research. I thank you and your staff for what you've done. I appreciate what the mayor has said. But I think in due diligence, before we go getting all fired up, that we need to have a lot of homework. We need to have a lot of questions answered. We need to do a lot of research. We keep referring back to Lexington as far as for our, so to speak, preemie. Why not call or ask Lexington to tell us what they do or don't like about what they did, whether it was successful or not? Find out from other areas what they like about theirs, what they don't like about theirs. Take a combination of all the different localities, combine them together, present them to the planning commission, let them hash it out, and try to come up with something to where we don't have to come back 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and change it. I have seen us in the past, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but we have kind of had a knee-jerk reaction and then had to come back and redo again because we overreacted too quickly. I want due diligence, I want a lot of homework done, and I want a lot of research because I still got a lot of questions, and I think this thing is very complicated. Just my 2 cents worth.
I mean, I think at this point, that's an example. And I said to the planning commission, you can make any suggestions you want. We don't have to use that one at all. That's why I found towns that are similar. I read some, well, I can't say I read in depth. I scanned all of them. There's some I wouldn't recommend to you. There's some that I like parts of and parts of others. And, you know, that, I'm not saying we have to copy 100% from one. The key is that if do you think it's a good tool? Are you willing to move forward with it beyond what we're doing? And then I agree with the mayor. The state code puts it in the planning commission's hands because you appoint them to represent, and most of them have attended the certified planning commissioner's course, which I would suggest humbly, if you haven't, and you don't, it's a good course for elected folks too. Because at the end of the day, you make the final decision. But I would suggest that there's nothing wrong with you offering them input into while they're reviewing. If you have one of these that I've provided, or you find one on your own, I didn't even look at cities in Virginia. Because counties function differently than cities and towns. They're a lot larger. As I said, there's some counties that, you know, to build a single-family home, the minimum lot size is more than an acre of land so that they don't have this urban sprawl. But, you know, you can pick and choose. You can pick what you like. What do you, so the homework, no offense, the homework's not all on staff.
I was about to say that.
The homework is on everyone to say, what do you like? What do you want?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So, quick question. Okay, 100% A plus. Okay, Dr. Davis, really, you do an amazing job for this. Ever since I was elected, I've seen everything you have to do. This is where I'm new to this, and I'm just going to ask a question. You just pointed out that already so much time has been spent on this, and we've been talking about this for such a long time. But this kind of got dropped on the council's lap just a couple months ago when this really took hold, because we were talking about what was happening over in, you know, Longwood Village and the Better Housing Coalition and these intentions, and it all just kind of wrapped up, and then it came to us in this PUD, which now we have an idea of where we're going. Why, and I know maybe this is the wrong way, why didn't it come to us, if not first, close to first? Why couldn't you just test the waters and say, hey, I've got an idea, and bring it to the council and say, I just want to talk to you about this, and put something in there for you guys to mull over a little bit, guys and ladies and gentlemen, to mull over. And then we can sit there and start at the process at the beginning. And then, of course, it goes through the planning commission, and we start fine tuning and everything like that. But it feels like at the end of the day, yes, we can always send it back, but there's always that hesitation because you've put so much time and resources into it up to this point. At least that's how it feels to a brand new guy with the smallest ward in Farmville. Thank you.
I may be wrong in saying this, but I've not heard anybody with this group tonight say anything bad about a PUD. I mean, my guess is, the general consensus is that everybody is still in favor of a PUD. It's just the question of getting it right before we pass it. That's bottom line.
More
I think
study,
you're-
more study on it.
I
Yes.
agree. I think you're right on that.
Well, I mean, I won't say that I'm for it or against it. I'm saying, can we look at what like I said, a lot of time was spent rezoning the whole town 3 years ago. You know, how does this complete, this is a pretty large change as far as I'm concerned. And how does this, I'm not saying it's not a benefit, and I'm not saying it's the cat's meow. I'm just saying that, we have a lot of stuff here now, and a lot of time was spent then. And like you said, we've made changes, and I say we, but people before me have made changes, and then all of a sudden went, oh, daggone it, we got to fix that. And that's where the zoning was done, and now I feel like this is oh crap, we got to fix that. So that's kind of where I'm not, like I said, I'm not against it, and I'm not for it, but I have a lot of people that are against it, and I'll put it out there because I know this is public, and if you, like you said the other day, if people want to come to me and say, hey, I'm all for it, then please, by all means, let me know that you're all for it. So that's kind of where I stand. And like I said, I'm not for or against. I'm not in a complete agreement with you, Tommy, on that. I'm just, this is where I stand.
So, Mr. Hardy, let me clarify when we redid the zoning ordinance, we were bringing it to modern day because the majority of it was from the 70s and 80s, and there was several changes here and there and updates. We reduced the number of zones, bringing R1 instead of 2 into 1. So a lot of that was modernization of where we should have been a long time ago. Plan unit development was brought up with the consultants and myself, and the other topic was historic overlay district. And the plan unit development piece, I did not, for potentially this purpose here, I did not, or the other, I did not want that to hold up a process where we needed to get something done more extensively and for the betterment to hold that up at that point in time. But now that we've massaged the other, this is a good time to do this because it's come up in conversation, as I said earlier. And it's okay, even if I don't want any of you all to think just because you adopt something and you have to make a change 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road that we didn't do something right No, it could be because it needs to change because there's been a change. That's what these documents are for. There's nothing wrong with changing something. It's supposed to be that way.
It could be a change in the law.
That
So
too.
then we have to go back and change it. So there's nothing wrong with us putting forth our best effort for whatever we do, and then we have to come back and change something. That's just the way things are. But you have to remember, for some of you here, we had a charter we had to change as well. And that wasn't easy either.
Like a lot of us here, in this room out here too, a lot of us were at the last planning commission meeting. And you think we have questions? At that last meeting, they had a lot of questions. Just meaning that this is not a rubber stamp by, in my opinion, of the planning commission at all. I think they're as equally trying to find their path forward as we are. Hopefully, a recap of what council has said tonight will get to the planning commission. If there's any direction there that may help them, or anything that we have said that they could be aware of, that would be helpful. But I think that I echo the thought here. I mean, probably the danger would always been to have a target date on this thing. If we had that in your report, I'm sorry for that, because I don't think we knew what we were saying at the time. But going forward now, if this takes 2 years, if it took 2 years, that's what we ought to take to get this right. If it's before, then so be it. But it's not just us. I think the community, I think the planning commission, I'm not sure about town staff. But the rest of us are just trying to find our way through this and make the right decision.
So, yeah, it is, my stomach's getting a little aggravated. It seems like the consensus is the same consensus that we had before, which is due diligence, take your time, let's make sure we get it right, but there's not a shut it down. So am I wrong in that? It seems the view is, you know that there's a lot of hesitation, you know there's a lot of questions, you know people want more information. All of this is documented now. It's on the record. This is what we're looking for. Scott knows that now. And so, does everybody feel good about that?
But the other key is, give me your feedback
Well, and that's the
from the
piece
things.
I was going to
that-
get to.
Okay.
Is
sorry.
it's, you know, we talk about bring us this, bring us that, bring us this. Like, I took it upon myself to call mayors and start talking to them about PUD ordinances from their towns. Like, you all can call other council members. And, I mean, we go to conferences, like, talk to them, find out what they feel. And it's an opportunity for each of us to educate ourselves, to find out whether people feel about these things, so that we can then bring ideas to the table, right? Like, that's part incumbent upon us to do. And so I would say, while we give Scott homework, let's also give ourselves some homework as well, so that we all come informed and ready to discuss the issue. I trust this group implicitly to do that, because I know that we have done that for years now. So if everybody's fine, I would suggest we move on from this piece of the agenda. Is that all right with all? All right, seeing consensus. Do we have any additional comments from town manager or staff tonight?
No, sir.
Do we have any other matters that council wants to discuss at this time? Not hearing any. I thank you all for this evening and for the lengthy discussion and for putting it all out there. Thank you very much. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Ayes have it. Thank you.